Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Not Just Politics podcast. The following is a conversation with Alex Darlington. He is the founder of the Stair Party, a community-focused third party in Pennsylvania. We sat down to talk about his work with the Stair Party, his problems with the two-party system that is currently being run in the United States, and also a little bit about how his work in the third party movement ties into our work in the bridge building movement. It was a very fun episode. I met Alex a while back, and we've been just friends on social media. This was our first time meeting up, so I hope you enjoy this episode. I think that was perfect.
Oh.
That was perfectly executed.
Yummy. Quite delicious.
Quite delicious?
Absolutely.
What was? Everyone hitting record at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, the sync up of the buttons, really brought your ears to really feel the moment, if you know what I mean. Just kind of like scratching of nails on a chalkboard.
No.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. That does not. I hate that noise. That's the worst one.
You hate it. I love it. And
That's
because
okay.
of that, I thrive and rise above the ashes. You, sir, are
This guy.
but soil in the ground. But that's good because everyone needs soil.
This guy just waffles 20. You just waffle 24/7.
Absolutely.
That's just you're just riffing all the time.
I think it's important to just constantly say the most esoteric and goofy things, and in order to get people to just catch an eye. Because once
Can I be completely honest?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I know exactly what esoteric even means.
I don't think I do either. I don't
Why
think
are you using it then?
because I like the word and I know
Okay.
it's used to describe. I know the basic idea of it's used to describe things that are kind of like conspiratorial. Like if you're talking about a secret conspiracy or a secret society of some sort, and they have knowledge that they don't share with the rest of the people,
Right.
that's considered esoteric.
Like the CIA or something like that.
Yeah, or like
Gotcha.
the masonry, like the
Okay.
upper echelons. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you a conspiracy theory kind of guy?
Not really. I don't really have any conspiracy theories that off the top of my head that I really get down with.
Gotcha.
There's some interesting ones for sure. I think the JFK one, where it's like he was killed by the CIA, is a really interesting one.
Yeah, that one is interesting. Yeah.
Because he did say right before he got shot, he was like, I'm going to abolish the CIA.
Yeah, like shatter it into 1,000 pieces or whatever he said and like scatter it to the winds.
Yeah. So
Stuff like that. Yeah.
it brings up, I think that conspiracy brings up a good topic of how much power does other agencies have over our conventional systems of government. Like,
Right. That's the idea of the deep state, sort of, as far as I know it. Like the people in Washington that aren't elected that have more power in some ways than our actual elected officials.
I mean, if that's the definition of a deep state of unelected officials having more power than elected officials, I mean, that's not too far off from what
Well, that might not be the official definition, but that's what I understand it to be. And I could be wrong.
I think there might be a lot, like from what I've seen on the internet and stuff. There's definitely I at least think there's a lot more to it. I think there's a whole, because it originates from QAnon, right?
Yeah, I think so. Which that one isn't even a thing anymore, right? They just kind of stopped that whole. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard about QAnon in like a year.
I have specifically made my Twitter feed. I've been refining it so that I can get certain things, and so once in a while I get like a nice little juicy worm of conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
like these people that believe that Donald Trump, he's going to come out of nowhere and he's going to come in like as a Superman,
Like a beam of light from the sky, and he's gonna like float down.
the second coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just kind of see them go on these Twitter threads, like these 50 tweet Twitter threads, and post the most. I mean, it's just a bunch of jargon put together, and they're like,
no
conspiracy. I don't know, guys. This might be the big one right now.
They say it every time, and it's never the big one.
They might be right one day. Like one day, they're gonna be like the walls. There's secretly people in your walls, and they're coming in. And
Are they little people in the walls, or are they full-sized people in the walls?
I actually go goblin hunting on the regular. I go in the forests and I set up little traps and put little cheese in there. Unfortunately, I have only gotten foxes and raccoons, but I am hoping one day, because I know they exist in there. I know they exist.
You know it because you saw a YouTube video from 2005 that's like 4 pixels at like 2 frames a second, and it's like, look at that, there it is, it's a goblin, that type stuff. The Finding Bigfoot people. Yeah. We found him. This is the one. Like, how is that show still running?
The Bigfoot one?
Finding Bigfoot.
I think it's right. I think it's still going strong right next to Hunting Hitler. It has to be. Those things get good views, bro.
I don't know. I guess some people watch those because it's just stupid, and they just watch it knowing that it's stupid. But I think some people actually believe.
That's what I think.
Hitler would be like well over 100 years old.
Right. I think the idea of the Hunting Hitler show is to see if he actually went to Argentina. Right. But I saw this interesting. I saw like a little mini video on where the Hitler in Argentina thing originated, and it actually originated from the Soviet Union. It originated from Stalin, because he was a little bit of a paranoid freak. And
well, you don't say.
What?
Well, you don't say.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know this, but Stalin's actually a little paranoid. He was a little bit of a goofster. You might want to look into him a little bit.
A little bit of a goofster.
Yeah. he was a... So yeah, I mean,
because isn't that the claim, is like the Soviet Union got the body of Hitler, and then whenever they DNA'd the bones or whatever, it like wasn't. But if that comes out of the Soviet Union, I don't think we should trust that information.
I don't remember exactly why he said it. I honestly don't remember any of the details. So don't take this as gospel. Don't take this as fact, right? I just saw a goofy video online, and I thought it was really interesting.
And it must be true then, because it's on the internet.
I saw an article online,
a reputable source,
absolutely, from
trustmebro.com.
Yeah, where they have like 15,000 ads to the side and the bottom and the top of like 15 things Coca-Cola can do for you. Yeah, and I saw this one page by definitely not an AI written bot that said Stalin is the one who could produce the Hitler in Argentina conspiracy, and I've just been absorbing that knowledge, absolutely, absorbing all those random articles. Yeah, and now I know everything you need to do with Coca-Cola bottles, bananas, honestly, any just various fruits that you find on the street. I now know that if I stick it in my
be careful. Oh, your engine. Okay.
Yeah, you stick in your engine, it actually gives it a little boost. Put orange juice in your engine as well. Put orange juice in your fuel thing. It actually helps out. Make sure to do that, everyone.
Okay, I've been playing along, but now I have to stop you, folks. Don't put. I don't know anything about cars, but don't put orange juice in your engine. That can't be good. I have to stop this. I have to stop this now.
Some guy was thinking about it. Maybe I should.
Yeah. One of our viewers was actually going to do it. No, please don't. Well, we met in like October on the Say What Needs Saying network. That's the first time that we met. Was on that call. Yeah. It was on a podcast with Zach talking about the 2-party system and also third parties, and I was there because I was still working with the Forward Party at the time, and then you showed up, and that's how we met, and then we connected over Discord.
You know what? That actually makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
Now it's clicking in my brain, because I was originally thinking that wasn't the case for some reason, but that narrative makes sense.
That's the first time that we met. Yeah, and then we connected over Discord, and then turns out that you were here. I didn't know you were coming. I had no idea. And then Christian told me a couple days before we left.
Yeah, I got notified. I forgot what the text was, but I know that Christian, he said that he was going to this, and I was thinking to myself, well, maybe I texted. I was like, do you have the convention link or something?
Yeah.
And I applied for the scholarship, and it was good to go. I think one of the things that I'm starting to realize with the conferences, I think me and Christian talked about it, which is that conferences, they when it comes to the scholarships of like getting there for free, Christian said they act like it's exclusive, but for a lot of the times it isn't, because they're trying to meet a quota so that they can go to their donors and say, oh, look how many people showed up for this.
Right.
And there's especially in a lot of areas, the resource pool of young individuals that first of all know about these conferences and are willing to go to them.
Yeah.
It's not that large, so there's just kind of money being thrown around in a lot
Get people to show up to the convention.
Yeah, a lot of areas. There's just a lot of money being thrown around in politics, especially at young people, to try to get them to do stuff for.
Try to lure them in. You don't have to have that on there if you don't want it. I just put it on there because sometimes people like it for the handheld stuff. But you don't have to have that on there.
Well, looky here. I'm about to upgrade.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so we're here, and I was wanting to have you on the podcast since we met, but it was like you're over in...
I'm over in Kutztown.
Yeah, Kutztown. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Okay.
Yeah. So
which is not anywhere close to Pittsburgh. Like
it's only like a couple minute drive.
It's about as far away as you can get within the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, on a real note, it is. Yeah, I mean, unless you lived in Easton, like there is a state on the border of New Jersey. I do feel bad for them for that, and if you drew from there to Pittsburgh, that would definitely have to be the longest drive, or from Philly to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Philly to Pittsburgh is like 5 hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's jump into this, and we connected over that. We connected on that podcast episode talking about third parties. You are not a two-party system supporter.
I am a.
So can you talk to our audience? Because I haven't really brought up that work that I did or any sort of that topic. I don't really think at all. We have never really talked about this kind of stuff. Not that I can remember, at least. So can you sort of lay out, I guess for starters, your argument against the two-party system and why you're a third-party guy?
Yeah. I'm definitely a duopoly despiser.
Okay.
And I would say that the main reason I don't like the two-party system is that I'm not a fan of the polarization we see in this country. The division in this country I see it's kind of heartbreaking in a lot of areas. So I do point, like when it comes to like the Braver Angels Convention, they're doing some really important work when it comes to helping out communities by having these workshops and trying to get people to talk together of different ideologies. But I think that also the polarization and division issue is much more systematic. And I think that the two-party system and what it fosters is what is causing a lot of the division we see in the country right now. If you look at the rhetoric that a lot of these politicians are doing, they are making sure to, in a lot of their talk and a lot of their rhetoric, making sure that the word like Democrats or Republicans are seen as the other and they're seen as bad.
Yeah.
And the reason I think they do that is if you look at federal Congress especially, their main goal, in my opinion, for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is to keep the money flowing. And in order to keep the money flowing, I think a good old divide and rule strategy has been working quite well for them. I think about how our nation's economy and our quality of life has been deteriorating over time. Poverty rates have been rising. People living to paycheck is going up, and people able to afford a house or basic living is starting to be a more struggle for a lot of people day in, day out, right? And this is, to me, a result of, I know that the thing is like, well, the Republicans have done this, or well, the Democrats have done this, but I think that they both have blood on their hands, and they're thinking to themselves, well, what do we do, right? We have this situation. We're not really running the economy. We're not really running the country very well, and we want to continue this position. And it's kind of caused by the corruption. We see this culture of corruption in Congress, and they're like, what do we do? And it works pretty well if you look at how people start to, and you look especially online, how people demonize each other. If they see even an R next to someone's name or a D next to someone's name, it's just, this person's the enemy.
Yeah.
Instead of people looking at the enemy as the upper echelon, the people that caused the issue in the first place, they see their fellow neighbor as the enemy. And what it has resulted is in the destruction of the American community, in my opinion. So because of that, I am a firm duopoly despiser.
Yeah.
I think that we need to build something from the outside and push in, and we need to stop with this thing of, this is the most important election of our lifetime, or because if you look at the election cycles, they always have some new fearmonger method to make sure that you keep voting. This is the one election. If they win, it's over. That's the basic thing. It's whether it's some sort of different issue each time, and they make sure to keep doing that in order to keep you voting. And what that's going to result in my opinion, is eventually the situation is going to continue to deteriorate. More and more people are going to start living paycheck to paycheck. Poverty is going to rise because at the end of the day, they're not focused on governing. They're focused on maintaining the flow of money by whatever means possible. And if the country does just, if 50% of Americans think the civil war is going to happen, if that does happen, just like you see in Russia with the oligarchy there, they're just going to flee the country. They don't care about you. Once they're done with making the moolah and making a total mess of things, my generation and future generations are going to have to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I am too. So I guess the argument that gets thrown at you, I'd imagine all the time, is like the wasted vote argument. And they'd say, well, Alex, I do agree with you that the elections do a lot of fear mongering. I do agree with that. I think that every time I'm curious, do you think that people are getting tired of it and checking out a little bit? Because that's, to me, is like what would, like, I'm getting tired of seeing it. And to me, it's like, in some ways, I don't want to vote anymore, just because it's the same stuff every time as it goes. Like you said, if they win, then it's all over. It's all going to get wrecked. Like, we're going to be in a tough situation. And I am going to keep voting. I don't think I'll vote for Republicans and Democrats for a while, but I kind of feel like that. So, but they would say to you, Alex, I am afraid that if whatever candidate gets elected, that they're going to do lasting damage, and also if a third party can't actually put a candidate up to get in a position to win, then I feel like my vote's being wasted.
So there's the first thing we have to realize is there's multiple different levels of what I think the argument goes for. So the first one is president, then it's governor, then it's Senate, and then you go into local elections, which is a completely different area.
Yeah.
To me, in my opinion, the real wasted vote is with the two-party system, because if you think that the Republicans or Democrats, or if you're for the person of the lesser of two evil arguments, first of all, you're still voting for evil. You already have recognized that. It's
That's
just
true.
a lesser evil. And then my next question to those people is, are you voting because you don't want? It's like you either choose. It's either the economy is going to get fucked. And can I curse?
Yeah.
Okay, it's either the economy is going to get screwed over in 10 years or 20 years, right? And I prefer, now this might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I would rather just my economy not get destroyed. And if you look at it from that perspective of, at the end of the day, either of these two parties, their main function is clearing the way to have their flow of money, and either one of them is not interested in actually doing any systematic reform or structural reform needed to put the country in the right direction and to fix the economy, because that would result in them losing, in my opinion. Then it starts to become more clear that voting for them is just continuing the status quo for no reason. And if you look at the rhetoric online, when third-party voting starts to become a real topic, for example, we're seeing this with Cornel West running. A lot of, and I've seen it in leftist circles, Cornel West running is a big controversial thing because he's going to steal votes from the Democrats, and and Trump's going to win, or the Republicans are going to win. It's going to be all over. And what that thing for me, when I see that type of rhetoric over Cornel West running, which is most likely he's going to get maybe 1 to 3% of the vote for president, it just makes me think my vote probably matters more voting for a third party, because people are complaining more about this 1 to 3% of the population when I see online rhetoric than anything else. And the more the conversation happens, that's the other thing I see, especially on the local level. A lot of people simply just don't know there's alternatives out there.
Yeah.
If you start, it's like, oh, wait, there is more than either of the two parties. And then you start to realize that the wasted vote myth, the lesser of two evil argument, all of this usually happens in chronically online circles. And a lot of people do want an alternative. And if you see the statistics, the biggest one that I see, I mean, people point to like the rise of independence, independent identification, and people also point to the more and more people want a third party, like 50-something%.
Yeah.
But the main one I point to is that in 1994, only 6% of the population saw both the Republicans and they didn't like either the Republicans or Democratic Party. Now in 2023 or 2022, I forgot when the poll was put out. This is from Pew Research Center. 27% of the population now doesn't like either of the two parties. And that, I think, is the much more important statistic of people that are so fed up. They also are moving away from the lesser of two evils argument in one form or another, and they're saying both of these parties don't represent me, they're not going to help me, and those people are more willing to try something new.
Right.
And when it comes to your vote, if you're wanting to see something new in the country, I do highly recommend voting third party. If you start talking in spaces about third parties and against the two-party system, start people opening and just simply beginning that conversation in your local communities, people start to think about it. Because, like I said, people don't know there's alternatives. You have to start talking about it. At my university, the conversation about third parties simply did not exist. Now it does. And now people are talking about it. Now there's people thinking about it, and now people are like, maybe I should go away from the two-party system. There was a professor I talked to. There was one of my professors. She's awesome. And it was the 2022 midterms, and in class she was talking about the lesser two evils in her class. And so I had to raise my hand.
You had to.
I had to raise my hand.
Had to say something.
I had to make my opinion known. What is the world going to be without my opinion?
People are really missing out.
People are really missing out without my opinion being spouted and my nonsense being out there.
A white man spouting his opinion on the two-party system.
Who would have expected this one? But I gave my spiel, And eventually I talked to her a few days later, and she said, yeah, I moved away. I'm registered and independent, and I'm going to start voting. I'm started thinking about voting more for independent and third-party candidates. So I'm rambling here a bit, but that's my main point that I want to get across is that for voting third party, I think that not only are you not wasting your vote, I think you're wasting your vote continuing to vote for a system you don't like. But I also think your vote matters much more when you vote third party in one form or another, because if you see the slightest tick, the slightest idea that there is going to be a third party that makes a significance in an election, then media and a lot of people go ballistic when they see that. Your vote makes it's not just, you put your vote in and it's like whatever, right? Your vote makes people start a conversation.
Do you worry about, do you worry about demonizing elected officials whenever you bring up that argument? Because at the convention, Utah Governor Spencer Cox was up on stage. Were you there for his talk?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, what did you think?
Overall, I'm going to give just like an overall umbrella answer.
Sure.
Because it applies to all of it. So for those types of officials, especially in federal Congress, I run off of the policy of forgive the people, not the politicians.
Okay.
I don't think I'll ever forgive politicians, especially a lot of them, for causing the polarization and the division we see that they know they're causing. Like, they know they're doing it. And sometimes I think to myself that I'm really happy that the governor came here and made his talk and gave support and against polarization and against division. But there's always a thing in my mind of, do you actually believe this, or are you actually going to do something, or are you going to continue, number one, being a part of the system as Utah governor? I believe he's Republican, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Being a part of one of the two parties that perpetuate this, being in the upper echelon, and not really. I'm skeptical of. There's the talk and then there's the action, and so far, there's some talk from people of, we want to be a bipartisan, or we want to heal the divide, and I think the word we need to be bipartisan is also loaded, because I think that especially in federal Congress, I think it's already bipartisan in a lot of areas, because they both have the same goals, overall goals. Both of those parties have the overall same goals. So when the Utah governor comes in and talks about polarization, I'm like, cool, thank you. But I'm skeptical about if you actually believe this, or are you just trying to make sure that because in your district or in your area, it's popular to talk about it. And like many other promises that politicians make, a lot of other issues that politicians talk about, they like to talk about it, but they don't feel like they don't actually want to change it. So I don't think my philosophy so far is changing when someone comes up and a politician talks about it. My difference, though, is with local politicians, because because even though the RNC and the DNC are very powerful institutions, it would be disingenuous for me to say that they have complete and utter control over every single election that happens, because there's thousands of elections happening in the country. Oops, sorry. So the main difference, as I see, is that with local politicians, those people I can get down with.
Okay.
Because I don't think they're plugged in. I don't really think they're a part of the system as much as larger, like especially federal congressional offices and executive positions.
Okay.
On the Hill, as they say. But on local elections, like my township supervisor and my mayor and stuff, I mean, they're just dudes. They're just guys and gals in the community trying to help out. So,
And you can get down with that even if you don't necessarily agree with them on everything.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, eventually there comes a point where, like, especially in the Maxatawny Township, the township supervisors were trying to propose warehouse development, and we don't like warehouses. We want to protect the farmland, protect the rural community, and et cetera, et cetera. So eventually, I mean, there's still the whole thing of, the voting system. Voting happens. Some local politicians still have to get out. Some of them simply just don't have good ideas. You know what I mean? But I don't have the same malice that I do for people on the Hill.
Gotcha.
And those type of upper echelon people in the DNC and the RNC.
So what I was getting at earlier is, like, do you see those people as so integral to the system that they have sort of become the system, or could you give some, I guess, like, what I'm saying is, like, is there any way to humanize these people, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or an Ilhan Omar, that just go off on social media about the latest, culture war issue? Like, do you think they're bad people, or do you think that they've been consumed by a system that breeds that kind of behavior?
That's some beautiful wording right there. Breeds that type of behavior, because you were gonna say that better than I was gonna do, which is that I think that the system does breed that behavior. I think that when it comes to a workplace, there's a work culture.
Yeah.
And in a bureaucracy, there are principles that you want to promote in your bureaucracy. In the Republican and Democratic Party, they have a culture of corruption. And I'll say it again. I'll keep saying it because I want it to be ingrained in the frontal cortex of people's minds. And I'm sure there's people that get into federal Congress that are there and they're like, oh, we want to help. We're here for the people. And eventually they get caught up in the system themselves, right? And they're victims of their own ambition or something like that. But I'm skeptical of that as well, because I think at a point, because you see people like Justin Amash, who realized it, who was a Republican. I believe he was a Republican. And he one day he was like, this is awful. This sucks. And so he declared independent, and I think then libertarian, and then he peaced out. If you know the system is, if you understand how, and people like Justin Amash, they know, if he knows, they all know, and they know they're contributing to it, and therefore, it's like, oh yeah, if you truly are you are a victim of your own ambition, then the next step is, oh, you realize this is bad? Maybe it's time to go somewhere else to make change. Not in federal Congress. Maybe just a mayor, or maybe just your local community. That's what I'm a very big person for decentralization. I'm a big person for people.
Decentralization of political power. Okay.
Yeah. Giving more autonomy to the townships, the counties, and the cities to do what they feel is necessary.
What about the state? Like the individual states?
I guess that too.
Okay. So just pulling all of that away from the federal government.
Yeah. In one form or another. I mean, it's up to each. I mean, it's hard to say, it's hard to say what exactly that looks like, because, like, in Pennsylvania, there's a municipal code for each township to follow, and that's going to be different from each state. They all have their own municipal codes, or I don't even know if some states even have a municipal code. So it's hard to say that, like, when I say, oh, I want decentralization of political power, what does that mean exactly? Well, all I can speak for is my state and what I've studied.
Right.
So I don't know about Ohio or New Jersey, because you're different from my state, which I appreciate, by the way. I'm not saying we should all have the same shit going on, but yeah. So I don't know. If you know the system's bad and you're a victim of your own ambition or whatever, then realize that be like Justin Amash and peace out and do something else. I'm sure you'll find some employment.
Mm-hmm. So then, do you think that there is still a need for? So then, if this decentralization of power in DC would happen, what would you leave the federal government around to do?
Yeah.
Like, what would you leave them around for?
I think the federal government provides an important role for things that require a national effort of some sort, or especially foreign policy. A nation needs some sort of foreign policy. They need a military. So the federal, when I say decentralization of power, right, I'm saying that there are some things where I think currently the federal government holds, especially when it comes to political accountability. There's a sort of centralization of accountability that I see where people are look towards, instead of their community or their local municipal elected official for assistance, people look towards their federal congressman or their senator. And I think that needs to change because they can't, honestly, in the grand scheme of the federal system of government and what we have, they can't really do much to affect your day to day. The city council or your township supervisor, they have more control over your day to day life when it comes to zoning, fixing the roads or whatever, than the federal government has. But I think the federal government still provides an important role of, when it comes to national efforts. Like, for example, I think there should be universal health care. I think there should be universal education. I think those would help. I think if you do them properly and you don't just throw it out there and it becomes just a bloated piece of garbage. I mean, everything has to be like that, obviously. Those require a national effort of some sort. And if you're talking about revitalizing infrastructure or something like a national high-speed railway system, I love public infrastructure so much. If you're talking about that, you are going to require, not just Pennsylvania to do that. You know what I mean? If you want a national high-speed railway system. So I think the federal government provides an important role. I'm just saying for right now, I think they, especially when it comes to accountability, I think they have too much power, and I think we need to start thinking more local.
I actually do agree with that. I do like that. I mean, I've always said that, like, the local elections are the most important ones. Like, that's the area where all the focus should be on. I think a lot of the focus goes to the federal.
Yep.
And that's not a good thing. Okay, so then this could be maybe a little fun thought experiment. Can you give me one thing you like about DeSantis or Trump, and then maybe one thing that you like about Biden?
So the one things that I think about is, so for Trump, it's the he made animal abuse illegal. I don't think a lot of people know that, is that he passed a law where animal abuse is officially a crime that you can get sentenced to jail for now.
Really?
So that's one thing for Trump. For DeSantis, from a political, like, science perspective, I mean, his marketing for governor and stuff like that, I mean, it was pretty damn good. Like, I can't I don't like it, right? It's definitely disgusting. But if you're looking at it from, like, a purely Machiavellian standpoint of I need political power and I'm going to do whatever it takes, I mean, he did well with his wording. He did well with his marketing. He did a lot of, like, populist sort of moves to get people to swing votes his way. So from that perspective, that's something I can say it was well done. I'm not going to say I appreciate it or something like that's awesome. I would say that that's something I can say, like, oh, that was well done. Like a chess move. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's a good chess move.
A good chess move.
For Biden, I guess I would say the same thing with DeSantis. I'm not a Trump supporter, by the way. I'd just like to let everyone know I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not. I think he's a symptom of the problem.
I would also agree with that.
He was a very divisive character.
Yeah. I don't think he's the disease.
No.
I don't think he's the actual problem. I think he's just a symptom, yeah.
Yeah. But the Democrats want him to be the disease so that they can constantly talk about him. They talked about him for like 4 years now. They're still going strong with it. For Biden, same thing I would say is that he was he went up there and he was like, I'm the unity candidate.
Do you think he's been that though?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Because I don't think he could even be if he wanted to, because he's a part of the system. He has the D next to his name. He's contributed to it, right? Everyone knows it. You can see his political history, and whatever people say, I can't, and I don't think a lot of the things he's done, especially with I think of the trade union crushing that he did, the railroad worker strike. That's awful. Like I don't think I could. I don't know why I think the unions endorsed him because I don't know. I don't know why the unions endorsed him. He crushed a railroad strike, but whatever. I can say that was a good chess piece move by going in there. Trump was the divisive character. He's the opposite. He's the unity candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's been providing unity whatsoever. And whatever wording he says, right, or whatever marketing he does, obviously it hasn't been working because his approval ratings have been diving, and people and polarization has been rising under his jurisdiction. But if I were to say like he was the cause of it, I would just say like with Trump, he's just a symptom.
Oh yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't blame Biden for nearly as much of the polarization as I would blame Trump for.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I just blame the institutions. No, I blame them. They're a part of the institution. Institutions are made of humans, but if you're talking about like what's the cause of the problem, it's the institutions. Those things have a culture of corruption, which is really unfortunate because.
But the institutions are made of people, aren't they? Like you said that. So
yeah.
There's got to be a way to change them. There's got to be a way to get that culture. Is there a way to get the culture of corruption out?
So you're talking about like a reform from the inside argument I've seen from people where it's...
Sure.
Where, I mean, I assume. I'm sorry for assuming.
Yeah, well, I guess there's like the one argument that I hear from people in my generation and a little bit from my fellow Point Pranksters, shout out, is that I see some people, I call it like the tear it all down mentality, like the postmodernist idea that all the institutions need to be leveled down to the bottom and then rebuilt type thing. I don't really like that argument very much. I guess I would be more in the camp of like, let's see if we can, like you said, sort of like plug something into them to try to change it from the inside type thing.
So in the foundations of the gut, like if you look at the skeleton,
there's a fly, like this little goober, like
little goober.
He keeps landing on my mic and stuff. Sorry, like he's still here. Continue.
He's actually a plant from the parties. He's making sure this conversation doesn't happen. You see it here first, folks. So in the skeleton, like if you're talking about the structure of how our government's made, like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the federal system government, I don't have any issues with any of that. When I talk about if there's something that I want to see built up from the ground up, it would be a new party with new principles in the workplace of that promote a certain culture that isn't what it is now. I think that right now the Democratic and Republican Party, they have fine-tuned their bureaucracies to make sure the status quo will continue. And even if there are people that come in that say we are against the establishment, I am anti-establishment, and they do that wording, my thought is, yeah, you say that. Like a lot of politicians say they want to heal the divide, but You are a part of the system that causes it, right? You are a part of the status quo, whether you like it or not.
And I guess there is an argument that they are benefactors of it as well.
I mean, I tell you what, when they pass that "I hate oil" bill, I wonder how many congressmen are selling or shorting those stocks of the oil companies. That's just one of the most despicable things that I've seen, is that those positions are used. When you talk about flow of money, there's a direct correlation right there, where their money is their position allows them to be in an advantageous area where they can change the economy fundamentally, or change industries fundamentally with regulation or whatever, and therefore buy or sell stocks in those industries so that they profiteer off of it.
Yeah, did you see that new bill that I think Matt Gaetz put it on the floor? It's the Pelosi Act. It's like prevent elected leaders from owning and selling investments or something like that.
And I've seen that, and it's like it's sponsored, like it's a bipartisan effort with Matt Gaetz and AOC.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like it because it's bipartisan. All I think is I point back to the the Pentagon Act, where people said, people rightfully are like, hey, the Pentagon just loses track of their money, like
All the time.
like a few $1 trillion. It's like, oh, hey, our national debt's rising. We have issues with our budget. Where did all this $1 trillion go? Well, we don't know. And so they introduced the thing called the Audit the Pentagon Act. You know what happened? It got introduced. That's where it ended.
It didn't go through.
So when I think about people putting popular bills, all I think about is they're putting them in. They know it's going to die, and yeah, they know it's going to die, but they know it's popular to do. So yeah, I mean, they can put the ban stock trading app, but do I think you guys actually want to ban stock trading? Nuh-uh. So if I think about when I'm talking about structural change, I have to see it. I'm seeing it from the institutions themselves, the two parties. There needs to be a third party that builds up from the local and grassroots level. I don't really like when it comes to the Stair Party. Shout out to the Stair Party, STAIR. I am not focused, or we are not focused on any federal elections. State, maybe, but most importantly, county, city, township, village, whatever. I think that something needs to be built from the outside, pushing in, and it starts by starting the conversation in those local communities, and especially in the universities, because you get the youth to talk about it. So that way, it's in the minds of the people that are going into higher education and in high school as well. So, yeah.
And do you only want one more party, or do you want many parties?
I mean, ideally, you know, like the Ford Party says, like we want 4 or 5 more parties. When it comes to realistically speaking, because proportional representation would require a constitutional amendment. I would say that for now, it needs to just be, we just need one third party that is strong enough to fight, because it will take a lot of fighting to do this. It will take it's going to be a hard battle. Politics, in some ways, is a attritional trench warfare, where you have to go from one trench to another. It feels like the battle just continues and continues. Eventually, there is an end. Eventually, you do reach Paris, right? But a lot of the times, you're just trudging through no man's land, or you're getting trench foot, right? So when I see people talk about like the statistics of there is a new third party, like people want it, this is going to be so easy, there's just going to be a tipping point. I don't believe that. I think it's going to have to be, I think a third party is going to have to be built through hard, arduous work from the people. And I think as a temporary measure, that should be a third party. People, it's just better for branding. It's better for marketing. It's better structurally, I think. And then as time goes on and the system starts to diversify and people are like, okay, we want something new, or let's say I think like it would be more realistic to say like in a state, one state, they start thinking about, like, I know Oregon just passed statewide ranked choice voting.
Really?
Yippers. So in like Maine, they also have statewide ranked choice voting. So eventually, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually proportional representation goes to one of the states. You know what I mean? And then from there, you can say, okay, now we have an ability to form coalitions, have 3 or 4 different parties, and stuff like that. But for now, if we're talking a realistic standpoint, purely.
So you want one new third party that can potentially open up the door for other parties to come in later on if the people choose to do that.
Yes.
And at the state level, that's going to be easier to do because if a state does pass statewide ranked choice voting.
It's even easier to do at a local level to get a city council person in. Like, for example, you win a seat for the Stair Party or the Ford Party or the Libertarian Party. Now it's in the name. It's in the local government. There is a libertarian making laws for their community, and now you can prove to them that you can benefit them.
Right. So the only thing I'm worried about, like what you just said, is when you put that argument in the context of like hard, like fighting, like it's going to be difficult. Do you worry about that actually in some ways also contributing to polarization if you're looking at Republicans or Democrats and saying like, hey, like I understand that your focus is very much not on everyday people, but it's on the institutions. But I think that's sort of the problem is that right now the American public is seeing an attack on the institution as an attack on them. Like, for example, Trump being indicted, I think that it's possible that Republicans look at that and they see that sort of coming back on them in a way.
I think what I would say in response is that from what I've observed is that they don't really, I mean, you could argue that they attack the institutions, but I think there's an underlying message of the Democrats, the Republicans, this new identity, this new thing. This it reminds me of the Republicans and Democratic parties creating 2 new artificial ethnicities and intentionally putting them towards ethnic conflict with each other. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of this intentional creation of a new identity, of these new identities to pit people against each other. So if you look at the rhetoric, from what I've seen at least, there is this underlying message, or there is this outright message that your people in your neighborhood, if they identify as something, they are the enemy. And I think it's imperative that we need to separate the institution from the people, because you, identified Democrat or identified Republican, you are not the institution. You are not what's happening up in federal Congress, because what's happening up there is we can all agree unilaterally is bad and a disease.
But what about the argument then what about the people put them there? The people voted the elected officials into the institutions, so do they not then share some of the blame for what the institutions do?
I don't see it that way, because people are simply just trying to do what's best for their family. And a lot of people simply aren't a policymaker. They just, they're somewhat informed. They somewhat know what's going on. And they haven't, like I said, a lot of people simply just don't know there's alternatives. And if you want to talk about whose fault that is, that's I think what I've observed, especially in the third party movement, is that it's their fault in a lot of ways. Like, you can blame the 2-party system for a lot of the reasons third parties haven't gone anywhere, but I also blame just the inefficiency of internal operations and the inefficiency of bureaucracy in third parties to not be able to get the word out. So Like, I go back to the same motto: forgive the people, not the politicians. They're simply trying to do what's best for their family.
Okay. Is there anything that the two-party system gets right? Do you have any compliments for that system at all?
Let me ponder this for a bit. Let me do a little bit of pondering.
Okay. I could pause the recording.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I think I'm about to say no.
Okay.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that the two-party system, as it works, as the system is intended to work, or the status quo, is beneficial in any way whatsoever. I think there is just, I guess, it's better than a one-party system, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better than a dictatorship, I suppose. But it's not. But it's very. It's still, with the way they act, it almost reminds me of an oligarchy, with the way that it's almost like a new Gilded Age that we're seeing, where large corporations have much more influence over policymakers than the average American or the working class American. And it almost reminds me a lot of the things, my mom, she's an immigrant from the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And she moved to this country because she wanted to escape the lawlessness there and the culture of corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like it really is sad to sometimes see, my mom looking at the news and saying, this is what's happening in Russia. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is what's going on. And I'm starting to see it in my government. Mm-hmm. And it's really unfortunate to see. So can I say, the only thing I'll say, it's better than a brutalist dictatorship. So mm-hmm. I think that's something.
Do you think that, not to like reduce anything, but like, do you think that the work that I'm doing, that Gavin and Christian and I, all of us are doing in the bridge building movement is sort of, do you think that we need each other? Do you think that that our job gets a lot easier, or vice versa, if we have third parties, or do third parties have an easier time if the country is less polarized?
Yeah, I think if the country is less polarized, third parties would be benefit. I think everyone would benefit from that. I don't think there's any good side to more polarization or more division in a country. It just mm-hmm. makes everyone want to work. It just makes everything harder to work. Mm-hmm. It's harder to work with people. It's harder for other people to.
Bro, he flew in my nose. This fly is
I'm telling you, it's an agent. It's an agent.
This fly is a government plant for sure. He's trying to shut this thing down.
Guys. Birds aren't real.
Bro flew in my. He flew in my nose.
Can we get that on recording? He flew into my nose.
Can we like zoom it in and like zoom it in and like see if we can? It's on tape. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was like taken aback by that. Flew in my nose.
No, I would also be taken aback if a alive and an alien entity just went into my internal systems. That would also
right up the right nostril.
Yeah, right up
straight
there.
up.
Right next to the microplastics.
Yeah. So okay, well that's what I figured. I think I think that I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that the Forward Party. I don't know if so I haven't been in contact with them, but I know that I ran into a couple of people that I used to get on Zoom calls with.
Yeah.
I'm happy that they're here, because I do think that that's a very mutually beneficial relationship. Mm-hmm. If we are in their spaces and if they are in our spaces.
I think the third party movement, the bridge building movement, and like the democracy reform movement, which is like pro ranked choice voting, pro whatever, like term limits and all that. They're all intertwined in one form or other, whether they like it or not, I guess. Mm-hmm. The only thing I would say with the Braver Angels convention, the only thing I would say is that instead of looking at this as red versus blue and coming together, mm-hmm. which kind of reinforces these two new identities.
Yeah,
it should be seen as your community, and the people versus the upper echelon and versus the elite. That's the only thing I would say. And I understand I understand the practicality of like you put the blue lanyard on. So in the Bravery Angels convention, 'cause
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know. So in the Bravery Angels convention, in order to have like people know who like where they lean, you would put on a blue lanyard to say that you're liberal, left leaning, or you tend to vote Democrat.
Yes.
And if you put on a red lanyard, you're right leaning or you tend to vote Republican. If you put on a yellow lanyard, like me, yeah, you just felt as if those
It was like other/independent type thing.
you didn't feel like it identified with you whatsoever.
Right. And then there was a white lanyard, which was that you either, it was like if you didn't want to disclose your political affiliation for legal or professional reasons. So,
Yeah.
for example, Ross Irwin and Manu Meal from Bridge USA, they had they had white lanyards on, like not disclosing their political affiliation. But yeah, I think I agree with you. And that was something that got talked about whenever the delegation created the new platform for 2023, was that someone voiced that the red and blue argument does actually kind of reinforce the problem that we are trying to solve.
Is that the one guy that voted no?
No, actually, the one guy that voted no actually stood up and he made a good point, was that in the platform, we said that we wanted this organization and this grassroots movement to properly represent America. And he said, well, the only way, for those who don't know, the delegation, or the convention this year had a perfect red-blue split. There was a perfectly balanced between reds and blues. Mm-hmm. And the only way they were able to do that is by telling a lot of the blues to stay home, because the organization is only about 20% red and it's less than 20% independent, and the rest of those are either whites or blues.
Yeah.
So it's a very heavy blue, which is a problem that we're going to have to address. We have to find a way to get more reds into the movement, but he's the guy that voted no.
Yeah. So the reason I think the bridge building movement is left leaning, I don't think it's because conservatives aren't willing to bridge build. I think that conservatives, from what I've observed, they simply don't. There's certain values that they hold dear, and they feel like there's other ways to heal the divide, and that is either through faith or family or community. That's what the main three principles I've seen. And so you'll see that conservatives are bridge building. They're simply bridge building in their church. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, Pierce Godwin. He also talked about that. He's the CEO of the Listen First Project.
Yeah.
He talked about that as well. Conservatives aren't apprehensive to bridge building. It's not like this sort of savior complex where it's like the left must teach these these lessers to be like us and be united. It's more like, we're not with the nonprofit, but we're with our church.
Right.
We're with our family. That's where our values are, and that's where we think we need to be if we want to bridge build. So,
but to go against that, I met plenty of people here that were church-going people that were Reds that were like, I'm here because this is going to help my church. And I also met people here that were, I lost that second train of thought. But I agree with you. I think you're right about that. But I also think that that they can do both. I think they can be a part of the movement and they can take stuff away from that and apply it to their communities. And also, that's what I was going to say. Brave Rangers is a very community-focused organization. It's a very community-focused movement. Mm-hmm. So
I completely agree with you. What I would say in response is might be just a marketing thing.
Yeah, we need to just do more outreach toward those people, try to get them involved.
They're saying it's these people that said, this is really going to help my church. Okay, so, other churches in your area, do you know of them? What do you think? How do you think they would be more willing to join this movement? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's how the whole organization started, in a church basement.
That's awesome.
Right after, were you there for that very first when they talked about it? Started in a church basement with I think it was with 11 Trump voters and 11 Hillary voters, and because it was right after the election, and everyone was just in shock.
All good things start in a basement and or garage. So
that is true. Dang, this didn't start in either one of those two.
Yeah, this started.
This podcast started in a dang college campus.
I think you're just destined to fail.
We're
now.
doomed.
We're
no,
doomed.
I can't believe it. We're doomed.
I mean, I'm doomed to fail as well. The Stair Party started in my mama's house when I was 7.
Was it in the garage or the basement?
No, it was it was upstairs.
No,
It's over for me, you guys.
UAM started where?
He doesn't even know.
Let's hope it was in a basement or in a garage. Otherwise, we're all doomed here. Okay.
Ooh.
Maybe there's a chance for UAM. I don't think Bridge USA was started in either. Oh gosh.
Guys, if you were born not in a basement or a garage, it is over for you. You might as well just give up now.
You know what that sounds like? It sounds like those like finance guru things that's like reasons why you're not rich. You don't have you don't grind 11 hours a day and save up $8,000 a month or something like ridiculous.
I love those things.
They're so good.
The entrepreneur things where they spell entrepreneur wrong in their profile photo. And it's like, here's my morning routine. I wake up at 3 a.m. I take a cold shower.
No, an ice bath. It's an ice bath.
Oh yeah. No. You take a cold shower for 5 hours. You take an ice bath for 5 hours. You go on a walk for 15,000 miles. You go on a pure sprint, and then you go home and you just
work your drop shipping site.
Absolutely. You look at the rare fish market and see what's available to you, and you get your rich uncles. You get your multiple rich uncles from Honduras to help you out. And
I love those.
And then you go to
They're
sleep.
so good.
You go to sleep at 2 a.m. and you start it all over at 3 a.m. You only get 1 hour of sleep. If you're sleeping more than 1 hour, you have essentially failed at life.
I agree, and I'm going to conclude this with one of those videos that I just recently found on Instagram and saved it. I'm hoping if I just play it into my mic, people will be able to hear it. Well, that should work, right? If I just play it into the mic, they'll be able to hear it. Okay, here we go, and hopefully you'll be able to hear this as well. Okay, here we go.
My day is 6 a.m. to noon, and I'm not crazy. You're crazy for thinking it takes 24 hours, just like some dude in a cave did 300 years ago. My second day starts at noon and goes till 6 p.m. That's day 2. And then the next day is 6 p.m. to midnight. What I've done now is I have changed and manipulated time. I now get 21 days a week. Stack that over a month, I'm gonna kick your butt. Stack it up over a year. Stack it up over 5 years. My entire life is different than it would have been otherwise.
So this guy is like, I get 21 days a week.
I get one.
So I was like, I hope bro doesn't go to jail because that's
soft hands, brother.
81 years in jail. No.
You get soft hands. If you're only working 24 hours a day, I work 32 days a week. All right.
No,
you
seriously.
have soft hands, brother.
I love that video because someone in the comments was like, every day is 1 second to me. I have beat this man. In 1 year, I am older than human civilization itself.
My favorite quote. I must say this before we pop off. You know, Bill Gates started at 21 years old. I think Steve Jobs at 20, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's too late for you guys. Give up.
Give up. It's too late.
Anyway.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap up here because we got to finish packing up and make the long drive home.
It's 11:25.
11:25, brother. Well, it was a pleasure, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming on. We'll stay in touch and definitely. Are you gonna like try to get to the Bridge USA Summit or something? Like, are you gonna try to get over there? And
if they give me a scholarship, when is it?
I don't know if they do those for that. It's usually, I think it's gonna be in February.
February. If they give me a free trip, then I will. Other than that,
cool.
I'm broke, so I ain't giving no money. I need that money for food, burgers.
For burgers.
I only eat burgers.
Only burgers. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Good luck with the Stair Party. I think it's very cool. And yes, bye everybody.
All right, it's
We're
been
out.
real, guys.